Hey everyone, good afternoon and welcome to Lead Your Movement. I'm Angelique Rewers, CEO and founder of The Corporate Agent, where we help professional service providers to win corporate clients. And this is our weekly live show where we talk to leaders, entrepreneurs, and movement makers who are out there using their platforms in order to affect big change in the world. And this is our first episode of 2021. So, for those of you we haven't connected with, very happy new year to all of you. I'm pretty sure it's a universal sentiment at this point in time that we are all looking forward to what 2021 is going to bring all of us, hopefully sooner rather than later. We will be able to connect with one another in person again, be back on planes, traveling and taking vacations again, and of course, seeing some incredible economic recovery and this end to the pandemic. So, as we kick off this year, though, we know that we are still in the throes of some of the impacts of the pandemic. And that's one of the things we're going to be talking about today, about how to shift your business, particularly if you're an executive coach, if you're a leadership coach, or you do some type of work with teams, even if you're a consultant or a trainer, other professional service provider, and you're working with teams virtually. How do you do that? So we're going to be talking about that today with two of the best people I know to talk about that topic, and you're going to absolutely love our guests today. Really quick, before I introduce this powerhouse duo, I want to remind all of you, if you're not already following the show on Spotify, to make sure you do that. And if you're not following me yet on Clubhouse, I invite you to join me there. We'll be kicking off with our first Clubhouse room next week. I believe it's on Tuesday. So make sure you're following me at Angelique Rewers, and I will be sure to see you there, where we can have some really great elevated discussions about what's happening in the marketplace today. But for now, let's focus on today's episode. And I have two incredible guests joining me. I think these have to be two of the most fun people that I could ever spend 45 minutes with on the planet. And I know you're going to see what I mean by that in just a few minutes. Our incredible guests today are Jen Barley and Karen Sullivan, who are the co-founders of Kickstart Your Edge, which is an innovative coaching and culture transformation company that works with major brands like Facebook, BMW, Coty, Sephora, Philosophy, Dyson, Whole Foods, and many more that if I kept listing, you guys would just sort of glaze over with the list of these bold, big brands that are out there playing to win. In addition to their corporate work, though, Jen and Karen do something else, and that is they actually teach other coaches, other leadership coaches and executive coaches, how to successfully work with brands like a Facebook, a BMW, a Dyson, because let's get real on this show today. What goes on in the coaching schools and the coaching certification programs is really just a primer. It's a lot different when you get out there and you meet the real world. So let's welcome to the show, Jen and Karen. I'm so thrilled to have you guys here.
Yay. Good. We are super excited to be here, Angelique, and it's going to be just a fun 45 minutes.
So one thing I didn't say in my introduction that I want to say now, aside from you guys being fun, I think the other thing is you guys keep it real. You tell it like it is. And you really are willing to confront those things that, need to get shaken out, whether it's with a corporation and they just need to address the elephant in the room, or it's about telling coaches and trainers out there who are working with these companies, look, that's not good enough. You've got to break through that. But I don't want to say necessarily that that's your movement. So what is the movement that you're leading?
All right. So that's a great question, right? So our movement that we're leading is about how to help people make bigger impact in the work environment, right? So Karen and I both have been in organizations and different places where we weren't fulfilled. We weren't happy because it was the same old of trying to solve the same old kinds of problems. Our movement is how do we actually build play to win cultures and play to win coaches to be able to bring more of get real attitude into those environments.
And I think that's that idea of playing to win. I mean, would you say, Jen, that too many coaches and companies for that matter really just play not to lose?
Without a doubt, right? So, and the interesting thing about playing not to lose and playing to win is people want the same outcome. They want to win, but it's the approach that they take to get there is where the real game changer is. Most people, most organizations, most teams, most coaches go in with playing not to lose. They don't want to rock the boat too much. They want to protect their gains. They maybe aren't as collaborative because of it. And if there was a mindset shift in it, it would be amazing to see what could happen, because winning still happens, but it's just at a completely different level.
Yeah, and it's about, I think, not ever being willing to take a little bit of risk, like really going for what you want and always kind of keeping one foot back. Last year was really an interesting year, you guys, because I know that your coaching clients, your corporate coach clients, the organizations that you're helping to build those play to win cultures in, our business, we really played to win last year. It was really interesting. I think some people kind of put up the drawbridge a little bit and they just kind of hunkered down, and others of us really went out there and said, the world really needs support right now, so we're gonna dive in. And I know you guys did that, which is gonna, I think, really inform a lot of the conversation we're having today. For those of you who are joining us live, by the way, we are live. That's sort of redundant, but that means Jen and Karen are going to be able to take some questions. So if you're here, say hello. It's good to see you, Pat. So let us know that you guys are here, and definitely be ready to ask some questions of Jen and Karen, because they can definitely roll with it. So if they say something that you guys want to ask about, that's great. So I have to start with the obvious question. And Karen, I think I'm going to throw this one to you. Some people would look at your business, especially in the coach space, in the solopreneur space. People get very territorial and so afraid of everything, so afraid of losing clients, so competitive that they're not even willing to sometimes talk about what's really going on in their business. You guys have one side of your business that's helping to help organizations play to win and create play to win cultures. You have another side of this business that's actually teaching other coaches to be effective in going in to work with these B2B, mid-size, small enterprise, all these B2B environments. That's sort of like training up your competitors and creating competitors in the market. So take me through why you guys decided that you were going to share some of your secret sauce and help other coaches to be able to go do what you guys do.
Well, you know what, Angelique, and we're totally stoked to be here, by the way. But I think one of the big things here for us is that what you just said about being afraid, right? We're not afraid. We don't play scared. That's not who we are. And we know that if you're going to sit here and play from a scared mentality, a lack mentality, you're handcuffing yourself to begin with, right? So we know that there is more than enough work to go around. We know that by being able to make an impact and teach people the methodology that we have to be able to go into these organizations, it's like that old Wella Bosco commercial, right? They tell two friends and they tell two friends and so on and so on. That's the bigger impact we want to make, because this isn't just about today and doing things for right now. This is about what's the big impact that what we're building and what we're creating can do, all over the world. And literally from California to Kuwait, yeah. We've trained people in our methodology, and we're like, you can go, you can do this. So it's the methodology and helping them have that confidence to just go in there and do it. But we're not afraid of not getting business. We're just like, okay, great. Let's teach people and let's go do more. And yeah. Let's continue to do more, because plain scared isn't helping anybody.
It's really not. I'll tell you two of my favorite things that I love about you guys, and there's a lot. I'm going to tell you, though, to be really straight with everyone, two of the things I love. One is that when coaches show up into an organization, frankly, if anybody shows up because I say this about selling to corporate as well, it's like if a decision maker agrees to meet with a consultant or a leadership coach or what have you, and they take that meeting, and that coach or that consultant comes to that meeting and they don't know how to run that meeting, the next time a different coach or a different consultant is trying to get to that meeting with that decision maker is going to be even more reluctant to meet with them, because it's going to be a waste of their time. One of the things I love about what you guys do about teaching people how to be effective inside these environments is that it helps other coaches, because if we have coaches who go into these companies, they win the coaching engagement, a company spends 200, 300, $500,000 coaching a team of people for a year, and they don't see any improvement, that now that HR leader quits, goes to another company, they're thinking about doing coaching and they're like, no, that shit doesn't work. And so I love that what you're doing, because I think it's really important to the coaching industry that coaches actually succeed in these environments. So Jen, what are some of the big mistakes that you see when people come out of a sort of coaching certification program? They go into these companies, they get the gig, they win the client, but now they're in there working with them. Where are they not showing up in 100% the way they need to?
Oh, there's so many ways. And I love that you said that, because it's true. The better representation we have for coaching, leadership development in organizations, the more people will hire. So the more good quality people. I think some of the things that are not happening for some of people who just get out of coaching school and then go in is they don't know how to customize what they know for a particular team. So basically they do tried and true, pull the binder off the shelf. This is the agenda that we're going to follow. And then this is the 27 slide deck kind of process, where really what teams need right now is for people to be able to laser through what are the behaviors, what are the dynamics, and what are the patterns of this team that are preventing the team from moving forward. And so people might go in armed with really great questions, but if they don't know how to read the energy in the room, it's going to be for naught.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really huge mistake that people make. And I also think that people don't have the confidence to be able to say, whoa, okay, guys, what just happened right here? Everybody just shut down. Tell me what's going on. And being able to draw that conversation out so we can really find out what's happening on the team. People will shy away because they don't want to, I guess, make a mistake. But the reality is the biggest mistake that you can make is ignoring what's actually happening in the room.
You know what, Jen, just to throw on that too, I think one of the big mistakes also is thinking that what you learned in coaching school is real life, because it's not. And Angelique, you're going to love this, right? So I'm going to throw this back. Like, okay, so I went to the police academy a gazillion years ago now, and I learned law, right? I learned theory. I learned the academic stuff. It was nothing like that when I got out on the street. And coaching is the same thing. You can get your foundation. You can understand, okay, these are the skills that I need. All right, I need to be able to ask really good questions. But if you can't put that into action, you're screwed, quite frankly, because it's not like that. And what has to happen is you have to just continually get better at it. Like when you're done coaching school, you're not done, right? That's just a part of the whole big picture. And it's like, okay, what's next? What else can I learn to be better, to know better, to do better? Because it just keeps going.
Well, and I think one thing that typically coaching certification programs really can address, especially the way that you guys can, is the reality. Like, fact is stranger than fiction. The expression "fact is stranger than fiction." I'm sure on the police force, I'm sure as a police captain or police chief, I always say your title's wrong. A police chief, you saw things that you're like, no one would ever believe that this is what happened or this is what we saw. And the same thing happens in corporate. It's actually one of the reasons I get so angry when I'm listening to any type of sales training. That's at most 99.9% of sales trainings that are out there. Or I listen to folks who really haven't been in the corporate space try to talk about selling into the corporate space. I laugh because I'm like, look, I've been in so many boardrooms when they've been making these decisions. It is nothing like what they tell you in sales training. And it's the same, I think, with coaching, in that the dynamics between the people and what's happening, it's like, if you can't analyze that and observe it the right way and then react to it. Do you think there's some fear there too of losing a client? Like if you call something out, they might get mad at you?
100%, right? And there's a bunch of fear. So if people go into an organization and they're afraid to not get renewed, they're screwed, right? So one of the things, Angelique, that you are such a superstar at is about how to build a relationship during the process of prospecting to getting in the door. And you're just a master at it. And we're a master on that back end of picking up that relationship once you're in the door through hopefully years and years and years of programs. And that's how Karen and I roll, is that our relationships with our programs go beyond the initial scope. And the reason is because we're not afraid to lose it, because the way we show up is, what does this team need right now to be successful? How do we help them get there? And how do we also be transparent about our process along the way that builds trust, that builds confidence? And if we did anything different, people should be disappointed.
I agree there, Jen, right? Because if we're not calling them out, and we're not calling out the elephants in the living room, and we're not sitting here and saying, hey, like, what's going on here? We're going to call a timeout. That's BS. We're not doing our job. Yep. And we really, truly, I mean, we're different. I will say that again and again and again. The way we show up is different. And that's why people want different. Think about it. Leadership programs, all these things, they don't work. Why? Because it's like, all right, wash, rinse, repeat. And it's the same crap. This is why it's such a game changer on what we're able to do. It's because there's nothing cookie cutter about what we do.
And your clients love that. I mean, how many times have you guys walked into big brands and they're like, oh, we've had so many folks in here, and like, we need something that's going to break through this noise. I have to put something up. There's a comment that someone made. It came from Facebook, so I can't give a credit by name. But they wrote, I had a hard time applying what I learned in the coaching school to the corporate world, and I came from the corporate world, right? So it's not like just because you worked in corporate necessarily that you can apply this stuff. I had to share that because I think that you can't assume when you become a coach or you've been doing some coaching that you're necessarily going to be able to make the transition. So it is tough. I mean, I think it is tough. One of the things that makes corporate a tough place, I want to say a tough place, a dynamic place to coach in, is that you are dealing with all sorts of hierarchies, sometimes that are invisible to the eye. They don't show up on the org chart per se, but there are hierarchies and politics going on that don't show up in any org chart. Then you layer onto that, you guys, the pandemic. You layer onto that 2020. So how did 2020 reshape coaching and the way you have to work with your corporate clients? And, obviously one of the big ones is everyone working from home. But what are some of the things that really happened last year that impacted coaching?
So I'll take this, and then Kara, you can add in what I leave out. So it's interesting to sort of see the arc of 2020, right? So we had March, boom, lockdown. And then in summertime, the impact there, a lot of people are like, we don't know what to do with our people, and we don't know what this means. Can you come help us? And it was a little bit, it was completely reactive, right? So maybe there was a sales team that they didn't want to furlough, but they couldn't really be in retail doing what they do because everything shut down. So how do we keep our employees motivated and engaged? What do I do with them? How do I show that we care? How do we bring the team together to use downtime, I'll say, to actually take us to the next level? So there was a little bit of help us figure it out. Right? So I call that a little bit reactive to the moment. And then what started to happen, I would say, what would you say, Karen? Like maybe October, November, people are like, all right, this is it, game on. How do we go to the next level? We are going to be in this for a while. Business travel is not happening. It's probably going to be a while before we go back. We're not sure what it is, but we know enough now that we can start to create this by design instead of default. And so come help our teams be able to navigate this virtual world. because not only do they have to work with each other in a virtual, they have to deal with their clients, their customers, their manufacturers. Just it's a whole different way of working. And so how then do we start to leverage where we are? So we've really seen a shift throughout the pandemic. But what we do know now is people are like, you know what? If this is the way we're working, we want to be the best that we can be in this environment. So instead of fighting the environment, how do we make this work for us? I would say that's what we've really seen.
It's an interesting sort of evolution over 2020 of the different, there's like the 12 stages of grief. It was almost like we went through 12 stages of sort of, and we're not at 12 yet, of sort of just mentally processing the pandemic and how that affects all of us. One statistic that stood out to me that I thought was encouraging is that 90% of CEOs that Deloitte surveyed, they partnered up with Fortune, and they did this survey in the fall. So this was, I think they released it around November-ish. 90% of the CEOs, and these are the top, 1,000, 2,000 companies here, said that they took proactive action on employee well-being last year. I mean, that's a lot, 90%. And there was this great quote from Josh Bersin. I don't know, you guys may have seen it yesterday. I shared it. I'll see if I can find it really quick. But just talking about how this whole idea of developing your people and how taking care of your people is so much more important. Josh Bersin, who I think a lot of you guys know, he owned Bersin by Deloitte, and then that's now sort of fully merged. So he's no longer doing that. But he said employee well-being has crawled out of the corner of the benefits department, and it has crashed onto the CEO's desk. And so just the visual of that. And I feel like the same can be said for leadership development and problem solving and emotional intelligence and all those other skill sets that become, is it fair to say those things became more exposed in 2020, that like you couldn't hide where you had gaps in those skill sets?
That's a good question. And I can speak from the emotional intelligence component specifically, right? Is 2020 was the most emotional year that people have had, right? The ups, the downs, the roller coaster, all the uncertainty, all the unknown, that it almost became mandatory. Now it's interesting. I do think that well-being has come out, but there's also some other interesting things that were being avoided. If I can, I don't want to derail too much, but people realized that people needed support, right? So it's just from being alone or isolated, not being able to see family members, not going out, understanding, what does this mean for part of our workforce that is considered essential, but are they here or not? But also a lot of things were also not being said in the workplace. And the amount of attention that Karen and I as team coaches would have to go to people to say, how are you talking to people about this, was eye-opening for Karen and I, right? So some of it was a natural thing, and some people forgot the human element. So I have to say that we sort of saw a split where how do you start to manage the uncertainty by at least saying, we don't know the answer, but we'll have a next report by this date. So I think I'm a little bit off of your original question. It's interesting to see well-being is so important, but how much leadership needs to walk hand in hand with employee well-being, because so much of what is done or said or communicated or not talked about affects everybody as well.
Well, and for me, and maybe I'm wrong about this, Jen and Karen, because I'm, that's fine. But I see those two things being so interwoven, like a strand of DNA. One of the top leaders I was talking to at a global consulting company, we were talking about, as far as, employee well-being goes, that the leaders had to show up differently every day and how they were leading and managing their teams, and how they were providing better glue on the team, and people were losing sight of their how would I say it? How the pieces connected together, how the part they're working on connects to something that someone else is working on. And then that was causing anxiety and stress. And so, to me, I don't know how you take leadership out of employee well being. And I don't know how you take employee well being out of leadership. Like, to me, I mean, I get that there's, different elements of that. We're not talking about yoga here. But to me, like, when you have a strong leader, your mind is at ease because you are confident that the person who's at the helm of the ship is not, we're not going over Niagara Falls a little bit, right? And so there's a sense of like, okay, I don't have to know all the answers. Things are uncertain, but I know we've got a leader who's making strong decisions, that they care about us. They care about the success of the company so we don't lose our jobs. They're making, bold decisions. They're being honest with us about what's going on. And that's why I think that, when the work you guys do is so important. Can you talk about what it means now as a coach to work with virtual teams? Because I mean, some coaching has taken place certainly over the phone and Zoom for a long time. One-on-one, obviously, you can do that. Now you're dealing sometimes with these teams that it's not just the coach who's separate from, it's not like you have this coach who, yeah, they're in California and the entire team is together in New York City. You now have a coach who's dealing with people on a team who haven't seen each other in, I don't know, a year. So what does that mean for a coach?
Well, I think it's like anything else, Angelique. I think that you need to stay relevant, right? So, and let's take you to like a timeline. Like we did that Adobe Acrobat stuff like bazillion years ago, right? We did Maestro conference. But you need to evolve with technology. You need to evolve with people. And by being able to be in that spot of taking anything that it is that we have and bringing it to Zoom and bringing it to life on Zoom, it's how do you want to really help the teams connect? And that's what we do. How do you build trust from these tiny little boxes where we look like the Brady Bunch on Zoom, right? And it's about getting real with people again and having those kind of conversations right up front, being relevant. Like, where's the energy in this room going right now? And being, it's funny because when you were just talking a little bit ago about taking care of people, I can't tell you how many times in the beginning of this pandemic, Jen and I would have a program. It's like, okay, we're going to do this. And we show up in a room and there's like people that have like these dead stares on their faces. And we're like, we are scrapping this right now. Let's talk about the pandemic because nobody's talking about the pandemic. Let's talk about racial inequality because nobody's talking about that. So it's being able to shift and pivot and be relevant with the material that you have and with the people that you're talking to and showing up and being, what does the room need? And how do I make sure that I'm confident in my ability as a facilitator, a coach, a trainer, whatever it is that you want to be, that I'm going to show up and make sure people get what it is that they need.
That's incredible. Thank you, Pat, for that comment that you just shared. I'm curious because we have tons of people watching us live today, which is amazing. We're so glad you guys are here with us. I'm curious how many of you have been coaching teams virtually. We'd love to certainly see that if that's something you've been doing. Pat's been doing it since 1988 before there was Zoom. As just a funny side note, it was so amusing for me I think it was around the April timeframe that suddenly corporate discovered Zoom. Right. So I just remember that it was like, there's this Zoom call. Like it was the funniest thing that so many people in corporate really never had to use it before. Jim, what about you? What do you, when you think about coaches working with these virtual teams, what stands out to you about what's most important on that front?
Well, there's a few things, right? So one of the things that we have heard time and time again from different leaders is that with being virtual, their element of collaboration has disappeared, right? So that drawing things out on the cocktail napkin, right? The just catching people in the hallway. So some of the things that have been having to happen with going virtually is about how do you create collaboration through and trust through a computer screen, right? So a lot of times people don't see what their colleagues are even working on anymore. They don't even know if they're in the office or if they're just taking a walk or if they're dealing with their kids doing homeschooling, right? Like all those different things. So part of the trend right now is how do you create meaningful, impactful experiences that are built on trust and collaboration and get everybody participating with it. So a big thing that coaches need to know is how do you translate what you would do in person on screen? How do you have the technology? I mean, there's so many different tools and collaboration technologies. How do you have engagement? People are zoomed out. Zoom fatigue is a real thing. And it's not so much that we're on Zoom, but we're confined to a little box, right? This little window I'm in. I don't stand up. I don't move around. I can't go in the back of the room and do a downward dog. I am here and I'm alert and I'm stiff and I'm looking in a camera and I'm not really looking at other people. So part of it is how do we expand people beyond that square that they're in to be able to feel like they're rolling up their sleeves in a real whiteboarding session to be able to problem solve in the best way. And it takes a little bit of breaking some of these Zoom habits we've gotten ourselves into. So it's about knowing how do teams come together and how do you create the interest that people are solving the right problems as opposed to just doing lip service.
Yeah, I think that is so true. Now, of course, when you said the downward dog thing, I thought to myself, well, some people have decided in the middle of Zoom sessions to, use the restroom or, do yoga or go, change clothes. So we also had to learn. I feel like somebody needs to put together all the Zoom fails, the gym fail videos. I feel like we need the Zoom fail videos from 2020. But I agree. And, it's interesting because it is very different collaborating virtually. The number one thing that I've heard from our corporate relationships that they're missing is that they don't bump into each other and have serendipitous conversations. And, yes, companies are trying to schedule the serendipity, let's everybody. It doesn't work the same way. You're walking, you think different when you're up moving around. You've walked away from the computer screen and you're maybe, you're outside for getting fresh air for a few minutes, you bump into someone and you have that conversation. And I think that's one of the things companies are really afraid of losing. What are some of the ways that you guys are helping coaches to be able to show up in a different way with coaching virtual teams? How are you guys helping your coaching clients and people who are just finding you to be able to be more effective in that space?
So, there's a few different things, right? So one is about really getting skilled at being able to have the kinds of conversations that will help the teams figure out what's going to work for them, right? So, for example, right now, everybody that we work with are in the pattern of let's schedule a Zoom call as opposed to just picking up the phone and calling somebody randomly. That's how you create serendipity, right? Hey, can I catch you for a minute? I want to talk about this. Getting off screen, getting back onto the phone, walking around. But part of this is that it's about really working with teams, and the things that we work with our coaches is getting the team to define how are they going to break through some of their patterns. Who is the team they need to be in this more scheduled kind of world, scheduled but distant kind of world. And part of it also is to know what works in person, deconstructing exercises and tools to understand the intent of them, so you repurpose them in a different way in the virtual experience. So there's a lot of different ways that go around it. But one of the key things is, how do you translate what you're trying to do from in person to a more creative way, collaborative way, virtually, that will get people to start to realize how these things can come together?
Yeah, I think I'm so glad you're talking about this, Jen, because there are definitely, we've seen it, folks who've tried to translate something into the space and didn't really think it all the way through. And so it doesn't, it really lands flat. And a lot of times, you don't, especially if you don't structure your engagements the right way from the beginning, you end up creating an experience that's somewhat lackluster. And now you're not keeping that client. I mean, it's one thing to win the client the first time, right? Where the real value is in the lifetime value of that organization as your client. And I think when you look at really successful coaches, they have a really high renewal rate. They have, the lifetime value of their clients might be 500,000, $1 million from just, one organization alone. Karen, there's something else that you said too that has really been sticking out in my head. And that is actually looking at people on Zoom. I know that sounds like a crazy thing to say, but for a lot of people, when they show up, they just kind of look at like a blob of squares instead of really looking at everyone. And I feel like the fact that you and Jen really kind of connect in with who's there and see, I mean, I don't know that all that many people are really taking the time to look at the faces and see what's going on for them.
You know what, Angelique, I think a big part of this is it's about one, and I'm not going to tell people don't go get clients. But I think a big part of what Jen and I do is it's about the relationships and how do we truly build relationships. And it's having, it doesn't matter for us, it doesn't matter if it's a Zoom screen or not. If we can create that connection, part of what we do, right? We do the Get Real Leadership experience, right? We're Kickstart Your Edge. It's about getting real. So we show up the way we show up. It doesn't matter if we're in person. It doesn't matter if we're on a Zoom screen. It doesn't matter where we are. This is us. And we put ourselves out there and we create the connection with people, right? It's understanding, it's talking to them, it's truly listening what people have to say. And we could, like you said in the beginning when you introduced us, right? We are about fun. And it's like, let's let people have fun in these Zoom meetings. Like, so for example, like we had 150 or 200 people on a Zoom call one day. And we're like, okay, everybody's going to change their name right now. What kind of mood are you in? And what's the last thing you ate, right? So we had an angry burrito, right? We had a pumped up nacho, like all these different things. It's about how do you create that. We want to be fun and we want them to have fun, not just be like, oh my gosh, it's another Zoom call that I just, I'm going to glare over. And what we do too is we make people keep their cameras on. Mm-hmm. That's connection right there. You're playing your cameras on.
And I think, Carrie, you'd mentioned something, right? So if we're looking, because Angelique was saying sort of how do you read through the screen, right? So if you're playing the pumped up nacho, change your name thing, and only 1/4 of them do it, that tells you information. It tells you something, right? Karen and I also observe different things. So we have that, like we watch a basketball game and Karen is like, did you see that shot? And I'm like, their shorts are too long. Right? So we just observe different things in general. So with the two of us, we can see what's happening. What are people looking at? Who's talked? Who hasn't? You have to be super aware and in the moment to be able to lead these teams, to be able to really see people. And then also a tip I have is I keep everybody on gallery view so I can see everybody. And then when somebody talks, I will and is going to talk for a while, I'll switch it to speaker so I can see them up close. Mm-hmm. I can see what's happening, right? And what they're saying, and then going back out to the gallery view. And so there's so many different techniques of understanding where is somebody, what are they doing? What does their body language say? When do they seem to not be wholeheartedly engaged? And the other thing is why we randomly call on people, right? To just sit there and we'll say, so Angelique, what do you think about what was just said? And we set that up so they kind of have to be paying attention too. But there's so many ways that as really, really good coaches, it is not only about the words that they say, but it's what's really happening when nothing's being said. And to be able to read that and see that is important, because that's going to give you that ability to pivot, to say, scrap this, change this, I need to say this, and having that confidence to be able to do it. And it's interesting because, we've talked before, Angelique, that a lot of times people need confidence. And it's sort of like that whole, do people even really want the gig? Because then they actually have to go and do it. Right. And it's part of it is that how do you build that muscle of really just being a person that through virtual can know what's going on without anything being said?
Yeah. It's funny, Jen, what you just said, right? It's like that confidence piece, right? So Angelique, and we've said this time and time again, right? Angelique, you help people build the confidence to get in the door, and we help them be solid when they're in the door with their confidence on how they're going to stay in the door. And it's about all the time how you're showing up. And you have, and think about it, right? Everybody in here knows you have a choice every day to decide how it is that you're going to show up. Are you going to show up and play scared, or are you going to show up and be in it, right? Are you going to own what it is that you're doing? Your choice.
Well, I think too, a lot of people live their life with like a rule book that they don't even realize that they're using. And so the fact that you said something, I think a lot of people probably glossed right over it when you said it, Karen, a few minutes ago. You showed up, you saw everybody sort of look like zombies with blank stares on the Zoom session. So you tossed out what you had planned and said, we're going to talk about this instead. There are people who it won't even occur to them that they can do that. Like, wait, and literally, and I don't even, like, literally people say that to us when we bring up something in selling to corporate or what have you. And Dan, I'm going to get to your question here in just a second, because I want to answer that. But people will say, I didn't know I could do that. And so I think one of the things that is really cool, obviously I've worked with you guys, I've seen, I've had a chance to look at some of your content that you deliver to your clients and really get to understand how you're helping these coaches to build a whole other elevated level of working with corporate clients in terms of their coaching skills, their coaching programs, their confidence in that. And I think part of a side effect of that, a positive side effect of that, is that it starts to burn down rules that you don't have to live by. And it gives you more flexibility and confidence to really meet the moment that's in front of you, whatever that moment is, to really meet the moment. You guys, I still have a few more questions for you guys, but just because I don't want anybody to miss this announcement in case anybody has to hop off, because I still have a few more questions. You guys have a training that's coming up that's specifically for coaches, people who are doing coaching work in the B2B space, who are working with virtual teams. And I know it's coming up like tomorrow, I think.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure everybody has that information before we just kind of end with a couple of final questions here.
Perfect. So it's called Virtual Insanity. Because why not, right? And we're going to be covering the 5 strategies for delivering engaging and virtual team experiences. It's at noon tomorrow, and it's going to be through Zoom. What, Care?
Eastern time.
Eastern time, thank you. And it's going to be through Zoom, and we're going to take you through different activities that we actually take teams through. So we're going to be talking about the strategies. It's going to be an interactive experience. It's not just sit back and listen, but it would be how we would actually engage with teams. And I think we're going to put the URL for sign up right in the chat, and go ahead and register. And if you can't be there live, you can still get the recording if you sign up.
So my team's going to put that link down there because I know it's a longer link. Is there anywhere else? Do you guys have a Facebook group or anywhere else that you've posted that link in case they missed the link? Is there anywhere else that they can also go to find out about the training? We are going to put that link in there though for everybody.
Yes, there is. You can actually go to our Facebook group and just join that. We have everything in there. It's just if you search for Kickstart Your Coaching Edge, as the Facebook group, that's where you would find it. So the long URL is facebook.com/groups/Kickstart Your Coaching Edge. It's long, right? But if you
I know, I was doing it in my head.
I know. If you just do the Kickstart Your Coaching Edge in Facebook groups, find it. And we have tons of training in there, tons of files, videos, things that group has been going for years. And it's a really great resource, but that's also where you can get the link.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So and is that a free training that you guys are doing? Is that free?
Yeah. Totally free.
Okay, that's awesome. I mean, honestly, right there, just to be able to come see some of the exercises and the way that you do it is gold. And yeah, that's just incredible. That's absolutely gold. So I have a couple more questions for you. I want to answer Dan's question, because this actually sort of kind of came up on another show that I was a guest on earlier today, this idea of small teams working with corporate. So Dan, I'll kind of take a stab at it, and then I'm going to let Jen and Karen answer this one as well, because I think it's a misconception that small teams, like micro teams, solo business owners, 2-person business owners, et cetera, can't work with major corporations. And so, Dan, it actually is very, very common. In fact, we have thousands of clients that we've worked with that tend to be between 1 and 10 people that are working with major brands. And one of our clients is a husband and wife team, and they're working with some of the largest technology companies in the world. I mean, these are brands that we all know. And typically when you're a smaller boutique company, you're really going into an organization almost with like a scalpel approach. And you're going in and you might have bench members. You might have, 5, 10, 15 other coaches, for example, that might be doing coaching calls. But usually they're looking for people with a high degree of expertise that are going to work with certain parts of the organization. It would be very difficult to do this if you're talking about IT consulting, where you need hundreds of programmers and developers and people doing an ERP systems implementation. But when you're a coach, when you're a consultant, you're a trainer, you're an influence marketing expert or a quality control expert, a lot of times being that sort of bespoke provider is better for the organization, because instead of getting a, $20 million bill from a global consulting company along with a bunch of red tape, you actually get to work with experts who can come in, sit down, deal with the problem, and get you there. Jen and Karen, do you want to talk a little bit? The question was also around what size is your team when you're going in to work with BMW and Facebook and Whole Foods and Dyson and Coty and Sephora and Philosophy and brands like that. Talk a little bit about your structure and how you're working with some of those brands.
Yeah, people don't hire firms to help them out by their number of employees. If they do, they have the wrong measurement criteria for what makes success. They hire based on capabilities, approach, methodology, and how much you understand what their problem is. So in terms of our size, Karen and I do, for the 98% of it, she and I do all the team work, right? For the most part. And then we have a team of coaches on our bench that fulfill the one-on-one coaching elements. So we have about, I would say 12 coaches that, depending on what the engagement is, depending on the level of the people that we're working in, depending on the industry that they're in, that they will come in to help us with the delivery of the one-on-one. Most of our programs tend to be about 9 months long. They include many team meetings, and then the personal integration for each individual leader will come through the one-on-one coaching. And so we also have, obviously, our own staff of running our business with marketing and assistants and some technology. But in terms of the frontline facing, that's how we're structured. And it works great because all the coaches that we hire to be on our bench have gone through our program. So they have to know our methodology, they have to know our language, they have to know our approach, and they have to know how to disrupt the status quo so they're effective and representing the brand well. And so that's how we select from people. But I have to say, we're a small company. And we have some big ass names that we get to go in and work with. And if we ever had the mentality of they won't hire us because we're too small, we would have just I guess, retired. I don't know what we would have done. It's really realizing people want different, they want unique, they want a methodology, and they want to be disrupted and not have the same old, same old. So if you can bring that, it doesn't matter how many people you have.
You know, it's funny, Angela, we had, when we were hiring people to do work for us, we actually had on our application, is it okay to break the rules? And if people said no, that it's not, they were out of the interview process right there. Because we don't want people that are just going to constantly play in the lines. Like, think different, do different, be different, because we are. And if you're going to follow rules, that just exhausts me and Jen, and anybody can follow rules. We don't want people following rules. We want creative people.
I honestly, I'm going to tell you, I think right now we're heading into the age of the sort of solo expert boutique company. I'm going to be really honest with you. I think that the next 5 years to 10 years was made for us in the B2B space. Because number one, they know they need to break the rules, Karen. They know that doing things the way they've been doing them is no longer going to work. Everybody's talking about disruption. And yet a lot of the companies that are out there talking about disruption don't even know how to create disruption in the halls of their own huge corporate conglomerate, let alone create disruption for another big corporate, company. I think there's a conscious awareness of what's going on and connecting with people in a different way that entrepreneurs are so good at doing. I think, I look at diversity and inclusion. I look at personality and, the last thing that's going to inspire your employees. Can you just imagine like an Accenture type company? I'm not going to pick on Accenture. I like Accenture, but like a company of that size trying to come in and get employees to like break out of their routine. I mean, it's laughable on its face. And so I just think this is the age. This next decade was really made for all of us. What do you guys, as we wrap up here, like what's your prediction? What do you want coaches to most walk away with today and to most think about in terms of this year, especially, but setting themselves up for the next couple of years? Like, what do you see in your crystal ball?
So what I would like coaches to see is there's this concept that, obviously we want people to play to win versus playing not to lose. But we talk about a concept a lot called own it and drive it. And it's your business, own it and drive it, right? And you have the resources, right? You have the resources in you have the resources in people like us to help you do that. But you got to take the freaking wheel, right? Why the hell would you sit there and be the passenger seat in your own business? Take the keys, take the wheel, figure out where it is that you want to go. And the biggest thing too is be you, right? They're not you, they're not us, but be you, but bring an element of who you are to what it is that you're doing and break every friggin' rule you can.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love that you guys are rule breakers. Where are all of the places that people should go to connect with you and keep this conversation going, especially if they're in the coaching space and they're not in your community? How do they get in touch with you and how do they connect with you?
Love it. So a couple of things that you can do. One is go to our website, which is kickstartyouredge.com. And we actually have a free resource on there on 289 surefire coaching questions. Sign up for that because that thing gets you in the know of everything that we're doing. That would be one. The Facebook group for the Kickstart Your Coaching Edge with Jen and Karen, that's a great place to also find us. And then also hop on this virtual insanity tomorrow, because the takeaways from that is going to be, we have a lot, right? So we just have planned it all out, and there's a lot that you will see in terms of technology, interaction, and strategies to be able to help with that.
I love it. I love it. I hope everybody does take advantage of that virtual, that training on working with virtual teams tomorrow. Let me say this. I've got to put this in there. I don't think we specifically said this. Companies are not going to go 100% back to the office, and they will never go back to being in a situation where everything's in person, like virtual, Zoom, all of this, even as the pandemic winds down this year and, up to 70% of employees move back into the office. coaching virtual teams, delivering virtual trainings, collaborating with virtual teams. I mean, this is here to stay. So, if you haven't mastered how to do that, you've got to be at this training tomorrow, because this is one genie that is just not going back into the bottle. So
yeah, it's true. It's interesting with our leadership coach training program that we have. We normally have the in-person components. It's now virtual, which had us actually change our curriculum. So now you get the in-person version and how you would do it virtually as well, with all the tools. And it's because we spent the time and energy to do that, because you're right, Angelique, we're going to be doing more and more virtual trainings. It is here to stay. Companies want to save the money. They don't have to send the travel cost, even when it's okay. And being able to master this is really the move. People need to be looking at how to do this if you want to keep working with teams.
Yeah, Cece just said it, the workforce knows that the change is here to stay. This has been absolutely amazing, you guys. I'm so honored that you joined us for Lead Your Movement. I love your movement. I love that you're teaching coaches to play to win. I love that you're changing corporate cultures to play to win. And I love that, especially as someone who is a rule breaker, you know how much I love that you guys are, showing people how to break the rules on a daily basis. So thank you guys so much for being here. As always, it was an amazing conversation, and I can't wait until we can do it again.
Always.
Thank you.
Thank you,
guys. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us today, for all your awesome comments and questions. We love having them, and I hope you'll continue to bring them each and every week. We have a killer lineup already for 2021 coming up. Some big guests that we'll be announcing soon. I just want to remind all of you, if you're not already following me on Clubhouse, be sure to do that at Angelique Ruers. We're going to kick off with some rooms next week, talking about some of the things that is really happening inside of the corporate space and what you need to know about the year ahead. And be sure to make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, where you can not only get the audio, but you can actually go back and watch these full episodes again. Next week, we will be back at our regularly scheduled time, which is Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. I will see all of you then. Until then, have a great day, everybody. This is Angelique signing off.